I'm going to show you every editorial influence the Bible ever had. We're going to go through the whole thing. And just so you understand it clearly, we're going to take it chronologically so that way you can just see how we even got here. So the original spiritual world that Jesus aligns with is like West African awareness cosmologies, Nile Valley mysticism like in Egypt and Nubia, Sumerian myth like the flood myth, the Eden, divine council, things like that, Canaanite religion like El and Asherah, and then proto-Mediterranean spirit logic and animist cosmologies across Africa and Levant. But there's key features about this. The features are the things that you need to understand. God was a presence, an awareness, a life force. It was no object-based salvation, no atonement, no sin debt, no blood economy, no legal obedience framework. And this is the world before Yahweh becomes the only God. I want you to understand. This is the world Jesus later returns people back to. Right, just in general. So just to take you a little further on, right? Now we're in 1200 to 950 BCE. This is the early Israelite tribal religions, right? This is where they're around, because Israel is not monotheistic yet. Right, surprisingly. So Yahweh is a local storm war deity. There's tribal ancestor worship. There's Canaanite divine council. There's folk rituals, charms, protective magic. But the only texts that were there were oral. Right, they were only oral. So we're talking about proto-Genesis myths, proto-Exodus liberation story, ancient poems used later in Judges and Samuel. I want you to understand that this is where God starts to move from awareness to a tribal identity protector. Then we get a little further on, right? This is where the first written forms of Genesis and Exodus even emerge, right? Around 950 to 750 BCE. So the Yahwehs, right? They believed that God is intimate, walks in the garden, argues, feels, and changes his mind, right? He's relational. He's not legalistic. The Elohists, they believe that God speaks in dreams. Like we're talking about morality is bigger than ritual and justice is bigger than purity. So you can attribute them to early texts like early Genesis, early Exodus, like the burning bush, Moses' call, stuff like that. And these reflect an awareness-based theology. This is the closest to Jesus, right? Then we get the rise of the Deuteronomist. So this is the takeover. It's huge. It's huge, right? We're talking about 720 to 550 BCE, right? I'm just telling you what it is, because the Deuteronomists, they impose legal obedience. If you sin, you will be punished theology, genocide narratives, chosenness, covenant as contract, purity policing, and national identity. So they even reproduce text. They make text themselves. The book of Deuteronomy, right? The Deuteronomists rise in kings and then superimpose themselves earlier in the Bible through Deuteronomy. They also are attributed to writing Joshua, Judges, Samuel, Kings, right? That whole thing. And this is really the birth of object-based theology, fear-based worship, and divine punishment logic as a whole. And this is the God that most Christians unknowingly worship, the God of the Deuteronomists, right? But then there's the Babylonian exile. And I need you to understand this is the most important theological shift in the entire Old Testament. Whole thing, right? Because Jerusalem gets destroyed, the temple gets burned, priests get exiled, identities collapse, trauma, despair, cosmic disorientation. It's chaos, right? So they rewrite everything. The priestly school rewrites everything. So the Genesis 1, the 7 days of creation, priestly school. Final form of Genesis, priestly school, right? And they did that last. Leviticus, Numbers, ritual purity system, genealogies, blood economy, object-based cosmic order. This is where blood saves theology even comes from. This is where it comes from. But it does not come from Jesus, right? Then we get the Persians, right? Because the Persians come in. So Israel returns home, but carrying Persian dualism, angel and demon cosmology, Satan as a cosmic rivalry, and hierarchical temple bureaucracy. So the books that you end up getting out of this, right, the books that get finalized out of this are Ezra, Nehemiah, Chronicles, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. This is the birth of the second temple Judaism, right? This is the world that Jesus enters. And then Jesus' world, right? So Jesus' world was a collage of 10 religions. 10 religions, right? Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes. I don't even know how to pronounce that one, but I'm just telling you the truth, right? Apocalyptic Judaism, Greek philosophy, Persian dualism, Deuteronomistic law, priestly purity, folk cosmology, and awareness mysticism, right? Or Galilean mysticism, as we can call it. So Jesus was born into this storm. Right, just telling you the facts, right? Then you have the school of Jesus, right? So just talking about what his sayings even preach, right? What he's talking about, which is nonviolence, awareness, presence over sacrifice, God has compassion, inner kingdom, no blood, no temple system, no object transaction. I just want you to understand this is Jesus's actual school of teaching, and later Christians erase most of it. Paul, right? Let's get to Paul, because Paul is one of those characters that's real controversial. Paul never meets Jesus historically. right? Jesus, like the living Jesus, he never met him historically. But Paul creates the sin economy, blood atonement, salvation as transaction, cosmic Christ, obedience to Rome, new legal system, object-based justification. And Paul was influenced by Stoicism, Greek dualism, his Roman citizenship identity, and his Pharisaic training. So this becomes the foundation of Christianity as we practice it today, because the Bible is actually Paul-centered. Most people don't catch that, but it's Paul-centered. So then the Gospels get written, right? So then we get Jesus's real teachings, right? The early church politics, the Roman persecution trauma, the anti-Jewish polemic, and then Pauline interpretation. So we get, right, just to tell you the order written, Mark, Matthew, Luke, John. That is the order written. That's the order written. So then we get to Revelation, right? Revelation is written in 95 CE. So we talking about not Jesus, not Paul, not even his disciples, because Revelation is just apocalyptic Judaism, Roman trauma, magic symbolism, and Persian dualism. That's all it is. It directly contradicts Jesus' teachings, and it survives because Rome later weaponizes it. That's all it's for. So let's keep going. Let's keep going, right? Let's get to Constantine. Because that we talking about 300 to 600 CE, right? Around there. Constantine and the councils. That era creates hierarchical clergy, Trinity, canon, hell as an object place, penance, Christian magic like Latin exorcisms, Roman spellbook prayers. This fuses Rome plus Paul plus Deuteronomist into one religion. Awareness is literally almost gone. And then we get to medieval Catholicism, right? This layer, right, causes saints, relic magic, indulgences, blood mysticism, sexual repression, demonology, exorcism manuals, like the ritually Roman I can't even pronounce it right, but Augustine becomes the architect of guilt and sexual anxiety. Let's actually go a little further, right? Because Calvinism comes in. Because Calvin adds total depravity, predestination, human worthlessness, object-based salvation, God as sovereign judge, and austere morality. He is the father of American Christianity altogether. Because let's get to the Americans. Right? So American Pentecostalism, it fuses West African spirituality, right, which is like, you know, like allowing ancestors to move through you, right? Methodist holiness, Calvinist guilt, American revivalism, Christian magic, emotional release, trauma movement. This explains why the Holy Spirit takeover looks so West African plus colonial fear. It has it all built in. But then once we go a little further, we end up in the modern day era, right? Because modern Christians practice Roman continuity, Pauline lens, Deuteronomist God, Calvinist anthropology, Pentecostal performance, American individualism, and Christian magic, I declare. Right. I'm just telling you what it is, while believing they are simply following Jesus. And I promise you're not. So just to give you the lab, right, I'm going to tell you who's all in this lab coat. Christianity is a lab coat with full of West African awareness, Canaanite religion, Sumerian myth, Egyptian cosmology, Yahweh's mysticism, Elohist justice, Deuteronomist legalism, priestly purity, Persian dualism, apocalyptic Judaism, Greek philosophy, Stoicism, Roman political religion, Q awareness school, Jesus' sayings, Pauline soteriology. Oh my gosh. You see what I'm talking about? Hellenistic Judaism, Gnostic influences, Greco-Roman magic, early Catholicism, medieval theology, Augustinian sexual guilt, scholastic logic, Calvinist determinism, Puritan morality, American revivalism, Pentecostal West African fusion, prosperity gospel, and free theologian syncretism. All sitting on top of each other. So, just so you understand what's going on. Are we lost? Yes! Yes, y'all we've been cooked for so long. But I wanted this to be on your head. I wanted this to go through your mind. Even if a date is a little bit off. The whole point of it was to show you that when we're talking about Jesus versus what you do as a Christian, it's way different. Fundamentally different. We're going to go through some of these way deeper though. I want you to understand we're still doing that Thursday, Friday long form post. We're still doing that. But like, I just wanted to get these out because it's an important thing to understand. And I don't really think it's something worth pulling back on.